Hi, Lanaya. Have you started back at school? Hi, everyone. Happy Friday, everybody. I have some Georgia Smith playing in the background right now, just feeling those Friday vibes. This song is about intersectionality. It's called Beautiful Fools. I've been like really into Georgia Smith lately. Just gonna wait like 1 or 2 more minutes for a couple more folks to join, and then we're gonna get started with our conversation today. Hey everyone, thanks for joining. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. It's like maybe 1 or 2 more minutes, but today's conversation is going to be about intersectionality and COVID, and I'm so glad y'all are joining us today. My name is Hannah Waiters. My pronouns are she, her. Also, let me know in the chat if y'all can hear me over the music, hopefully. My pronouns are she, her, or they, them, which are interchangeable. I'm a curriculum developer with About Face. And I currently am residing in Redwood City, which is a Ohlone territory. Gotta shout out those ancestors. And I'm currently going to school at California College of the Arts in San Francisco. Whoop, whoop. And I'm starting school in actually a couple weeks, so I'm feeling the pressure with all y'all who are starting school and work this week. So I feel ya. So we're gonna be welcoming on a very special friend of mine and a student who is involved with the Girls Task Force with About Face this summer, named Briana Fowler. So I'm going to invite her on, and we are going to have a great convo today. Let's see if she's on here. Just waiting for her to join. Some more Georgia Smith coming on. Let's see. Brianna's here. Don't want to feel you. Don't want you in my mind. Don't want to feel you. Don't want you on my mind. So we are being joined with Brianna, who's connected with Girls in Action. And she's joining right now.
Hello.
Hey, hey. For a second, I forgot you were coming on.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I'm having a little bit of Wi-Fi trouble, so hopefully it won't be a problem, but...
Okay, I think we're good.
Is everything good? Okay. Hello. Do you want me to introduce myself right now? Does that sound good?
Yes, please. And how's your school going? Everyone would love to know what it's been like being back in school.
Yeah, so I just kicked off my senior year last week, and so it's been pretty mellow so far, but I can tell it's going to start to pick up pretty soon. But I'm also in the process of doing college applications, so it's all keeping me busy. But yeah, my name's Brianna. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm a 17-year-old from the Bay Area, Watsonville to be specific. And I am an intersectional feminist, and I'm really interested in getting more involved with social justice activism and intersectional climate activism. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the program we did last summer. Is that a good time for this?
Sure, I would. Perfect. Yeah, we'd love to. Yeah, Brianna worked with About Face and the Girls Task Force with Redwood City Public Library, and I got blessed enough to be their mentor this summer. We got to see the great work that they were doing, and yeah, we'd love to hear a little bit about what y'all did.
Awesome. So I found out about the project because a friend of mine from my school sent me an Instagram post that was promoting it. And I was really excited to apply because I had been doing a lot of sharing on social media about, just like all the things that had been going on. And I was trying to share information and resources to educate and inform anybody on my Instagram who wasn't really aware. So as I was learning more about America's history and starting to listen to a lot more stories and like narrations from people who are traditionally not centered in the conversation, I guess you could say. I was excited to get more involved, and so when I saw the About Face Instagram post, I was super excited to get involved with that. So I signed up, and I just like learned so much, and yeah, I'm super excited to be here and to be doing the podcast that we're doing.
Well, we all the and I'm because it sounds like you're an ethnographer now and are doing so much research outside the program and taking it back to college and to school, and so we're really fortunate to have you on. So I'm really excited. But if y'all would love to just engage in and like as we're talking today, please feel free to like add anything that we're missing or add anything that's insightful in the conversation. But excited to be here with y'all.
Okay, yeah.
So yeah, thank you so much for telling us about the podcast. And there's going to be some other times that we're kind of going to talk about what y'all made, because y'all were just so great at making infographics and relating all of these issues back to the public. So hopefully we'll have a chance to kind of touch base on that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to know. I'm sure not everyone here right now knows exactly what intersectionality is, and it's such a heavy metaphor that we're talking about and thinking through, especially nowadays in COVID. And so I was wondering, since that was one of your projects, if you can help kind of lay the groundwork before we get into the more conversation.
Yeah, sorry
Can
if
you
it's
hear
a
me?
little bit laggy, but so intersectionality was one of the things that our small group with About Face researched this summer. And so what we were finding out about was Kimberly Crenshaw, who was the woman who introduced the theory of intersectionality. She wrote an essay in 1989, and it was called, I highly recommend that you take a look at it if you get the chance. It was called Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex, a Black feminist critique of anti-discrimination doctrine, feminist theory, and anti-racist politics. So long title, amazing essay. And in the essay, she speaks about her experiences as a Black woman. And she explains how we can't look at her being Black and her being a woman as two separate identities, but that we have to understand that they're interconnected and they reinforce each other. And that's what intersectionality is when you have more than one, like you said earlier, I think check the boxes of more than one identity that society typically discriminates against, and how those identities kind of work together to create compounded systems of discrimination.
Right. And I like that you're saying because it's kind of playing.
Is my internet working well, you guys? Can you hear me?
Yeah, please type in the chat if things are becoming kind of fuzzy. But I can hear you on my end. You're a little laggy, but I can still hear you. But yeah, intersectionality, it's a complex phenomenon, right? It's one identity is not really connected without other identities, without other systems of representation. So there's identities like we could say like houselessness, LGBTQIA+, citizens who are have an immigration status, ability, class, gender, religion, any others that have been left out, please drop in the chat. Differently abled folks, those who have to exist in a system where it's not necessarily physically universal, right? There are all these different ways that our identities exist in these frameworks, which is exactly how Brianna put it. And trying to understand, a big part of our job as researchers and ethnographers is to understand and make visible these systems that represent these individuals, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Cool. So COVID right now would you say that it's making these international representations of these folks, it's worse, right? It's shedding light, and if anything, perpetuating the way that these intersectional identities are linked within one another, right? When we think about environment, there's a certain folks that there are certain minorities and groups of folks that are most drastically affected. Like we're in this together, but we're not all in this together in the same way. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Brianna, but that's what we're really going to be talking about today, is the way that all of these systems are interlocking with one another.
Yeah. Exactly right.
And please fill me in if I left anything out that y'all
No,
studied.
I think you did a good job pointing out how it's doing two different things. It's shedding light on them and like kind of bringing to the surface all of the ways that people are being affected differently, but it's also perpetuating it, and it's like contributing to those differences.
For sure. Would you like to talk about a couple different examples of some ways that you found that they are interlocked, especially in the midst of COVID right now? Like, what does COVID and intersectionality have to do with one another? And like, what are some ways that we're seeing them that you and I, discussed?
So one way that I noticed, and this kind of got me into looking into intersectionality, was right after we shut down all our schools and stuff. I live in a lower income neighborhood, and my mom works at a really poorly funded charter school. And I noticed disparities between when we shut down for the schools and everything. I noticed a lot of disparities between the school that she was teaching at and the school that I go to, which is a more like typically affluent, like private school. And like everyone, my school's technology or curriculum is based around technology. And so
what the pandemic too, right? So y'all were like kind of prepped already for it.
exactly. So we all had our iPads. We all had like, for the most part, reliable internet access. And watching my mom struggling to teach from home because so many of her students didn't have the devices they needed or an internet connection or whatever. And so that was one way that it really jumped out at me. But since then, I've learned a lot more about it, and I think aside from education, there's been a lot of, when you say it perpetuates it, obviously there's been like anti-Asian rhetoric and xenophobia. There's been a bunch of things that I found out pretty recently, like within the past few days, about how Native American reservations are being disproportionately affected, and how one way that we've been told to like prevent coronavirus and keep ourselves safe is by like washing our hands and staying clean. And there's this thing that I was reading about where there's this huge inequality in like access to plumbing and like indoor plumbing specifically on these Native American reservations as opposed to white households. So
Right.
that's been a huge problem, and like there are all, and if you look at just the cases too, there's a huge disparity in numbers. So I think it's like obviously intersectionality is a huge topic, and there are so many different identities that we could talk about. But those are some of the ones that I've noticed.
No, and that's such a complex, like, significant example to really reference right now is the way that indigenous territories are being affected, and also like the American community, even in say like that water shortage, or that water's being used, not having, you know, been like thinking about like the of like the prison pipeline, right? And like the fact that like hand sanitizer is made in those systems, and like those individuals aren't receiving a lot of hand sanitizer. It's just like so ironic, right? Or even when we think about now, like all the, and really sending positive to those who are fighting the fires, but like so many, um, those who are in prison are the ones who have to fight the fires, and those are individuals who are sick as well with COVID and are being paid for like $2 to $5 a day, which is even drastically more severe, right? I think that that's actually one of the reasons it's taking a lot longer for the fire to be put out, is because the fires in Northern California to be put out is because they have fewer really bad and not getting enough media, right? Like it's not something really drastic in the news. School systems are being affected, and charter schools are still like pretty programs, and wondering like how even public schools who have even less funding, like how they're being supported at a time like this. Like, so I think the conversation is great because I feel like we can continue like on some of these.
You cut out a tiny bit at the end there. What was the last thing you said?
Oh, I said that's why we continue our research and continue to be in these conversations together.
Oh yeah.
This shed light. Yeah, so you said that you don't feel like everyone's in the same boat right now. Could you speak a little bit more to that?
Yeah, so I want to call out first how blessed I feel that and how privileged I feel that we have, like my family and I have the technology we need to continue our school and our work. But I know that that's not the reality for like a lot of people. And one thing that's interesting to me too is all the essential workers. Like people are going out and essentially risking their lives because COVID is so dangerous, and like they're on the front lines every day. And I think one thing that's interesting is those of us who are able to stay home and work from home and whatever, we're almost becoming desensitized, or like COVID-19 lifestyle is kind of becoming a new normal for us. And I mean, we're trying to adapt or whatever, but I think in that we have to be careful because we could forget how much of a threat it really is to the people who don't have the privilege to stay home and stay safe. And so I while we're calling out essential workers and we're saying thank you, like great job, I really think that more needs to happen to support them financially or whatever it is that they need to be able to stay safe and to still be able to feed their families.
Can you about like, workers? Are you talking about workers in addition to those who work in the
Um, it did cut out a little bit, sorry, but are you asking like what workers are being called out and which ones aren't, kind of thing?
yeah?
Yeah.
If you
So
feel like there's
I feel like we're calling out, like we're appreciating healthcare workers and grocery store clerks. I haven't heard really anything about, you know, farm workers, childcare providers. Like I feel like there's a huge inequality in how we are. Like maybe it's people we deal with in our everyday lives are like, yes, you're like doing great, and then people who maybe work behind the scenes or we're not really seeing them or we don't understand what they're going through on a daily basis if we're not seeing it with our own eyes and it's not being represented in the media. We're less likely to be like shouting them out or like lifting up their voices or letting them speak out about how they're being affected.
is I feel like not him, they don't not all, but
Yeah, the sound is cutting out a bunch, like Jennifer said down there. I couldn't hear. I probably heard like 2 minutes of that. I don't know if it's my internet or yours. I don't know, or Instagram. Is anyone else's
I
cutting
hope
out too?
maybe we should
Restart it. We can try that. Yeah.
um
I could also try switching to my like cellular.
let's try it because I also don't want to like footage of them. But,
Yeah.
maybe it would be as long if it's really forward. So we'll feel particularly vulnerable.
Sorry, you were asking about what people are particularly vulnerable. Is that what you said? Yeah. So I talked about this a little bit earlier, but well, farm workers, and as Henry mentioned in the chat, farm workers who aren't being given masks and protective gear, um, and that's a huge population that's being affected and are particularly vulnerable. And then add on to that the fires in Northern California, and like the terrible air quality, and they're still out there working, and that's how we're getting food on our tables. Like they're very, very vulnerable, and then that's also their families that are being put at risk. And then racial and ethnic minorities in general, and I've seen some media coverage on this, but again, one of them that jumps out to me is the Indigenous communities. I talked about the funding access, but also with some of my other research, I've seen that just health disparities in general before COVID, and now it carries into COVID, it's part of like the intersectional conversation, is health disparities have always been there, but and it has a lot to do, it has everything to do with the combination of poverty and unemployment and limited educational opportunities, limited access to healthy food, environmental conditions, and all of these things come from a history of oppression of Native people, and with things like Native American genocide and Native land being taken and Natives being pushed off of their land, lack of representation in government and in the media, and all of it's combined and all of it connects to one another, and then it makes it so that simply being an Indigenous person in America makes you more likely to be impoverished or not have as many accesses to healthcare. And then, so when you're in poverty, then that's a connection that makes you more likely to contract coronavirus. And so that's kind of how it carries into today, is all of these things that have affected you your whole life are now affecting you in worse ways as the world is getting crazy and there's viruses and there's fires and all of it, and like the environment is, being depleted. All of your identities that you don't have control of necessarily are working against you, and while you're trying to feed your families and stay safe and healthy, you're having to battle these systems of oppression at the same time.
Well, it, can you hear me still? Okay? Or-
Not really, it's kind of cutting out, but sorry, do you want to say it again, or maybe like type it in the comment if there was a specific question? No, sorry, I don't know what's
we
happening.
might have to restart.